When you start using super physiological doses of anything, it's not good for you.
What's up, guys? Derek, moreplacemore.dates.com. Today we're going to be sort of responding to Greg Doucette's response to my response of Brandon Harding's reference where he said you don't need to cycle off GH.
And then finally in the morning we have this, which is growth hormone. I've actually been doing this since prep. I just continue to do it because you don't need to cycle off growth, if you didn't know.
Basically, Greg, he says this.
More Plates, More Dates suggests you should take insulin when you're taking growth hormone so that it lowers your chance of getting type 2 diabetes. Problem is, you have to cycle off insulin as well. You can't just use insulin all the time. Insulin will cause type 2 diabetes as well. You can't just take insulin all the time, okay? So if you just think, oh, I watch More Plates, More Dates, I'm agreeing with him, I don't like Brandon's theory, I'm gonna just use the growth hormone, but I'm gonna do insulin all the time. Bad. If you do growth hormone all the time in high doses, also bad. So both are right and wrong. So you just basically have to pick which one you want to believe here.
Chronically high IGF-1 levels, serum GH levels, you're going to eventually end up with some level of insulin resistance. And this is why you have bodybuilders who pin insulin in the first place to regulate their blood sugar and to keep it relieve stress off the pancreas when they're using super physiological dosages of GH, especially if they're using it year round. That's almost, you would be stupid to run GH year round and not be looking at using insulin to relieve stress off your pancreas. So you're very likely going to need to cycle off your GH unless you're using a physiological amount that's super, super low and it's like anti-aging dosages. If you're using amounts for bodybuilder dosages, you're going to need to cycle off at some point. It's almost guaranteed. So just to clarify exactly what I'm referring to, it's not that you shouldn't be taking insulin in order to take growth hormone year round. The point I was illustrating was that the reason you would administer insulin is because you have no choice, because your body is in a state of hyperglycemia where you have to manually lower your blood sugar. Now, ideally, you would never get to that point in the first place, which is why I was saying if you force yourself into a position of hyperglycemia and you're, going to do that regardless, like Brandon Harding had suggested, where he's probably not implying that he's going to use 4 units forever, but the whole point of the initial video was Brandon said you don't need to cycle off GH, which is a general statement in regards to basically claiming, perhaps he didn't mean to do this, but this is what he accidentally did, indirectly or on purpose, said you can never have to cycle off growth hormone, applying to all dosages. I'm sure he probably wouldn't say that if he could have redone it, but the fact remains is that's what he said, so that's what I was trying to clarify. So if you're using a growth hormone dose year round, that's making you have elevated blood sugar and inducing insulin resistance, you have to implement measures to combat that and try and improve your insulin sensitivity and or manually reduce your blood sugar via exogenous insulin administration. Hence why a type 1 or type 2 diabetic can't just walk around with elevated blood sugar all day. There's a reason it's not healthy. In addition, the point of the video isn't asserting that if you use Brandon Harding doses year round, you're going to become type 2 diabetic. That's not what I was saying. I'm saying in terms of an overall longevity and health context, are you going to become type 2 diabetic at 22 years old from using 4 units of growth hormone year round? No, you're not, but you're going to induce some level of insulin resistance down the line that's going to negatively impede your health, in addition to impeding your body composition, your bodybuilding progress, which is, both things are important here in this context. Obviously, the health being the main one, but, people think the fear mongering around this is based on, you're going to have to sacrifice some health for bodybuilding. But it's like, there comes a point where you're actually sacrificing your bodybuilding outcomes as well. And that's what happens when you become insulin resistant. There's a reason why some guys, stall brutally and can't progress anymore. And a lot of it is not understanding pharmacology and their own hormone profile. Staying on a bodybuilder dose of GH year round is not a sustainable practice. And there's going to be some sort of toll to pay down the line, and you're going to have to implement blood sugar control measures that you otherwise wouldn't have had to do if you weren't using a supraphysiological dose year round. Now, obviously the context of therapeutic versus supraphysiological has gotten a bit mixed up in this, exchange of videos somehow. But I believe I made it quite clear that if you're using a dose of growth hormone that induces progressive insulin resistance, you would benefit from blood sugar control measures. Otherwise, you have negative health outcomes as a result of hyperglycemia and eventually inducing type 2 diabetes potentially. Or, insulin resistance is not good either. Just because you're not a full-blown type 2 diabetic, it doesn't mean there's no negative ramifications that come with becoming insulin resistant. Like, just go look up all of the things that have been tied to insulin resistance over the years, and you'll see that there's no positive outcome in which having proper blood sugar control isn't of the utmost priority in a health or bodybuilding context. When it comes to this sort of, both of us are right and wrong, that's not the case. There's no right and wrong in this scenario. There's no outcome in which having high blood sugar and making yourself insulin resistant is correct. You have to be healthy, ideally, and also if you want to maximize your bodybuilding longevity and body composition goals, you would, control your blood sugar and remain insulin sensitive, ideally. And even if you're going to, partially, induce insulin resistance via your accrual of insane amounts of muscle mass via, high doses of whatever, this is something that has to be cycled off, which is what the whole point of the video was in the first place. I think we're both trying to say the same message in my first video as Greg is saying in his response video. We're both on the same page here. Bodybuilder dosages year round are not going to be healthy. And in addition to that, forcing yourself to be in a position where you have to use insulin to regulate your blood sugar so you can stay on that supraphysiological dose of GH is not sustainable or healthy either.
When you start using supraphysiological doses of anything, it's not good for you. I'm going to just use the growth hormone, but I'm going to do insulin all the time. Bad. If you do growth hormone all the time in high doses, also bad.
I believe we both illustrated that quite sufficiently. At least I thought I did. So we're obviously on the same page here. I'm not arguing with his explanation. However, the only thing that I would probably disagree with most people on, probably not even just him, probably a lot of people, is the definition of what anti-aging doses are. Because a lot of people just assume in general, 1 to 2 IUs equals anti-aging. And it's like, there's reference ranges that are incredibly variable for a reason. Would somebody with a 300 nanogram test level be the same as somebody with a 1,000 nanogram test level? No, just like somebody with a 100 IGF is not the same as somebody with a 300 IGF. There's a difference in dose response as well as the dose itself. 1 IU isn't equivalent to 2 IU, nor is it equivalent to 3 IU. Just because you get to 4 units, it doesn't inherently become dangerous. The fact remains is everyone's liver is going to respond differently in terms of converting IGF-1 and in terms of what dose equates to what in the blood. So, for example, I posted a video follow-up to my initial Brandon Harding response where I showed what my IGF-1 level was on 3 units of growth hormone. I had a nearly 500 IGF-1 level, which is in the same range as active patients with acromegaly. So, is this something that could be sustainable year-round with absolutely zero deleterious outcomes? I would argue no. And I believe even at 2 units, I probably still would have had an IGF-1 level that is not ideally, sustainable year-round with optimal health outcomes. You could have one guy who takes 2 units of GH, which for one guy is anti-aging, for another guy puts them outside of their reference range. IGF-1, that's not the equivalent outcome being on the low end of the reference range, being in the middle, and being on the high end. Like, there's stimulation of tissues that isn't being accounted for outside of just the hyperglycemic response. Brandon actually responded to my video and left a comment in my comment section. He says, Derek, super physiological doses of GH. Brandon, 2 to 4 IU a day for no more than 6 months. Diabetes type 2, no one, question mark? Bit of a cheeky comment, but it's cool. the thing is, let me just read my response. I believe there's no really better way to elaborate on my point here. So he says you don't need to cycle off growth hormone if you didn't know in his video. And then I say, am I misinterpreting the statement? 4 units of high quality GH is indeed super physiological for 99% of people and could easily put your IGF-1 above 500 nanograms per milliliter. And I said I'll post a video showing my bloods as a reference, which I ended up doing, where I showed a nearly 500 nanogram per milliliter IGF-1 level using only 3 units of GH, and I feel is not a sustainable and healthy level to sit at year round personally, and will inevitably lead to some level of insulin resistance and or force you to implement blood sugar control strategies down the line that otherwise probably wouldn't have been necessary. Is somebody going to become type 2 diabetic in their early 20s or have any apparent issues at all? Highly doubtful, but the point is that it's an incredibly general statement to make, especially in a context where it is being applied to all dosages. So, and just to add on to that, regardless if you're not going to become type 2 diabetic, even it takes a while. It's not like you just take a bunch of GH and then one day you wake up and you're type 2 diabetic. It's a progressive process of destroying your pancreas essentially. So, but the process of you getting there is going to severely hinder your health outcomes too. It's not like you have to reach full-blown diabetic status to have hindered health or hindered bodybuilding outcomes. If you're insulin resistant, you're not going to build muscle efficiently and you're going to pack on tons of fat when you otherwise wouldn't have been. This is why guys who come off of contest preps, when they're super carb depleted and super lean, they seem to partition nutrients extremely effectively and seem to just suck up nutrients like a sponge post-contest. And once they overdo it and cheat a ton and then spill over, they start to get a horrible body composition within just a few weeks again. It all comes down to blood sugar management and not overloading your body with crap. And that comes with food as well as things that raise your blood sugar, like GH. Any level of insulin resistance is counterproductive to optimal bodybuilding outcomes as well as health. So it's not just like, am I type 2 diabetic? No, so it's fine. The reality is you would build muscle more efficiently and be leaner if you were more insulin sensitive, and you would be healthier at the same time. Anyways, that's just my stance on it, and hopefully I made my point abundantly clear in this video. Be safe. This is a lot of people just tell you in general, oh, this dose is fine because it's anti-aging. It's like, it's not a universally applicable thing. You have to look at your own blood work and look at your own health markers and figure this stuff out for yourself. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, check out my blog, moreplates.com. Check me out on Instagram at moreplates_more_dates. Follow me there. Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, etc. Podcast link, video description below. If you guys want to drop a 5-star rating, it's always appreciated. It also helps the YouTube algorithm if you drop a comment below. So if you guys do that, that's much appreciated too. Talk to you guys soon.